Hi, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Andy Shepherd. I'm the clinical lead here at ReadyCare. In today's podcast, what I want to do is just address the question around which oils you should cook with. So we know now, and you guys will be more than familiar with the idea that if you follow a diet that's lower in carbohydrates and higher in healthy fats, everything gets better. And the idea that your oils that you should cook in should only be vegetable oils and we should avoid animal fats basically didn't bear out when there was a thorough literature review done when you look through all of the science of the last number of years. So basically, saturated fat is absolutely fine to cook with. I mean, there is no objective, empirical, clinical literature that says that saturated fat is bad for you at all. But that was the thinking, to be fair, of the last 30 or 40 years. However, it wasn't the thinking of your grandparents and your ancestors, who would regularly cook in things like lard and tallow and rendered suet, which is a kind of a fat that you get in around internal organs in animals. So the interesting thing is that not only was it not beneficial to cook with these industrial seed oils like rapeseed oil, canola oil, vegetable oils, margarines, it was actually harmful. And there's a lot of literature that shows, including the Women's Health Initiative, Minnesota Coronary Experiment, lots of different ones, the Leon Heart Study, all showing that increased amounts of polyunsaturated vegetable oils, so think canola oil, rapeseed oil, margarine, in place of saturated fats, was actually harmful or deleterious for people in that particular group or cohort. So people who ate less animal fats and more processed vegetable oils tended to get more cancer and more heart disease. And that's been replicated numerous times across the clinical literature. So a couple of points I wanted to talk about today. First of all, canola oil is another name for rapeseed oil. So if you use rapeseed oil in your cooking, when I refer to rapeseed oil and canola oil, they're interchangeable terms. So they've been used in cooking for many years, but they may not be as healthy as previously thought. So these oils have a huge amount of processing and refinement done to them. They're heated up to very, very high, incredibly high heats, which causes oxidation and destabilization and basically rancidity to happen to the oils. And they've been linked to a number of health problems, including heart disease, inflammation, and cancer. So typically they use kind of heat and chemicals and mechanical pressure, and this strips them of their beneficial nutrients, but it also creates a kind of a harmful byproduct, which are known as oxidation products. Another thing that canola and vegetable oils do that is not good for you at all or have inherent within them is an imbalance of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids. There's a lot of omega-6 in vegetable oils. When you compare that to animal fats and fish fats, they tend to be much higher in omega-3s. And there are some exceptions to that rule, including chia seeds. So where you have an imbalance of omega-6 to omega-3s, you have more of the bad omegas, which are the 6. They're good in a small amount, but you can generalize and call them bad. And less of the omega-3s. That's really harmful for the human body. So it causes an increased risk of inflammation, heart disease, and other health problems. And also, there's been some links in the recent literature to cancer. So consumption of canola oil or rapeseed oil has been linked to an increased risk of cancer, including particularly breast cancer, actually. And the reason for this is not entirely known, but it probably comes down to disruption of the cellular integrity. So the integrity of the cell is damaged. Security of the cell is damaged by the inflammatory process that we know happens when you use those canola oils. So canola oil is the one that I'm focusing in on. And there's a reason why I keep picking on this one. The reason is if you look at, I would say, 90% of products that have any amount of oil in them are just processed food. And I'm including here granola bars, cakes, pastries, donuts, and even stuff that you think it shouldn't be in. Like I've picked up sugar-free granolas and just looked at them. I like checking stuff out in the supermarket. I'm a bit sad that way. And just learning as I go as well. But you wouldn't believe the amount of products that have canola oil in them. When you see canola oil in something, the vast majority of the time, do not consume it. It's in mayonnaise, it's in some spicy sauces, it's in all sauces, actually. If you pick up any sauce, you'll usually get canola oil in it. So I'm not saying never have a sauce or never eat this, but certainly minimize your consumption of it, just in line with what we know now about what canola oil does in the body and the links to cancer in particular, as well as overall systemic inflammation. So a couple of key points here when it comes to which oils to avoid and which oils to choose that I want you to take away. The worst oils, without a shadow of a doubt, are canola oil, which is another name for rapeseed oil. We usually call it rapeseed in the bottle form in Ireland. They call it canola in the States. But when you look at the labeling, it can come under canola or rapeseed oil. Anytime you see vegetable oil, it's bad news, actually. Spray oils, like your 1 cal spray oil and that sort of stuff, it is madness to use those. Oil shouldn't be in a sprayable form, which means it's even more processed than the canola oils, which are already terrible for your health. And the whole idea that you should be using an oil that's only 1 calorie per spray doesn't actually bear out when we look at the literature. You don't need to control your calories by eating low-calorie foods. You need to eat less calories by controlling your appetite by eating real foods. So the other one to avoid is margarine. So your kind of fluoroproactives or Benecol type cholesterol lowering spreads, I personally would avoid them, knowing what I know about the workings of the human body and cholesterol. The ones to choose and cook with to be healthier, for heart health, to do your bit towards preventing cancer, maintaining weight, all of that sort of stuff. Coconut oil is great. Personally, I don't like the taste of it when you cook with it on a pan or something like that. We cook everything in bacon grease or lard. So sometimes if I'm cooking up rashers and there's a ton of fat comes off them, I'll put it into a cup and just store it in a press and use it for the next week. Lard, you might think, well, that sounds mad. Will that not clog up your arteries? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And if we look back to the generations gone by, your grandparents knew this. If you were to go back to 1940, 1950, 1960 and say, look, I know you're cooking in lard, but that's high in calories, so it'll cause you to gain weight and it's going to clog up your arteries. You would be laughed at because that was a new sort of a hypothesis in the late 70s. And if you look at rates of heart disease in years gone by, they were dramatically lower than they are now. I mean, it's not even close. If you look at remote tribes around the world, still to this day, whether they exercise or not, that don't eat processed food, but eat lots of these saturated fats and cooking saturated fats and rendered, what they call suet or rendered animal fat, they tend to have way lower levels of inflammation. Almost no Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. Diabetes tends not to exist. They tend to have little or no heart disease. So, and it's whether they exercise or not. So exercise is not the mitigating factor, as some people will kind of point to and think, well, that's because they're out hunting. Even if they're old, elderly, infirm, injured, staying at home to take care of kids, it makes no difference. So coconut oil, lard, butter, and olive oil. So hopefully that's given you some bit of indication, because I know it can be difficult to know, which oils do I cook in, which don't. You'll hear people saying, if you cook with olive oil, it's not that heat stable, so should I cook with that? And actually, on that point, because I didn't mention olive oil, I just reminded myself, if you're using olive oil, probably best to avoid and just put it on your salads. So I know they use it in Mediterranean countries, but they tend not to cook with it as much as they do put it on salads and cheese and ham and, all sorts of things, tomatoes and all sorts of things. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Like on this side, subscribe over on this side. Click the bell notification so you get notified when we go live. If you're watching this back on replay, thanks for watching. And we will see you guys very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.